new to the channel, we welcome you on board and want you to know that you are part of a growing community of survivors. This channel is dedicated 100% to adult male and female survivors here in New Zealand and out across the world. So we have many conversations with survivors, and we have another fabulous one today. But before I introduce Matt to you, I'd just like to advise for you as our fabulous audience out there, if for any reason you start to feel triggered, please stop watching, go to the show notes below, and you'll be directed to some help and resource. So in the meantime, have I got a fabulous guest for you? I'm so honoured to have Matt Ashton join me today. Matt is clearly a fellow survivor, otherwise he wouldn't be with his team. He's a peer support worker for Male Survivors Canterbury Service, Male Survivors Canterbury Service, yep. He was a soldier. He got a Defence Force medal. I think we need him to show us the medal, to be fair. He used to be a gang member, and then at the age of 30, he decided that was enough, and he felt, in his own words, that he grew up. So fantastic to have you on the show with us, Matt, and lovely to meet you. Kia ora.
Thank you, Gloria. I feel quite privileged to be here.
Oh,
Very
that's
nice.
all. Great. Well, look, as with all interviews, Matt, what's helpful for us is just hearing a little bit about your story, and I'll gently guide you through that, and where you are today and what you're able to do today, because I think we've got some fantastic things to discover with you, and so honoured that you're, you know, doing the peer support work that you are, and I bet those wonderful men out there are grateful as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if we start, usually it's just a little venture into childhood. What was that like for you growing up? Whatever you're comfortable to share, Matt.
Okay. Well, I was born in Timaru in South Canterbury, so that's where I grew up until I was about 28 when I moved to Christchurch. So the first half of my life was basically in Timaru, born and bred there, and I was pretty good at most sports like rugby or swimming, and liked to participate. Was from my father was a plasterer and my mother worked at the swimming pool, so just an average house, I think, middle class family. There were 4 children in the family, and everything wasn't too bad. And you know, I suppose between the ages of 7 and 10 or 11, I got abused by a neighbour at their house, where I used to get sent by my mother to, when she was too busy or whatever, she'd send me there. Yeah, and that was sporadic. Maybe 4 times a year I'd get abused for 4 years or somewhere along those lines. But now in hindsight, when I look back, as soon as I left the property, I must have blocked it out because I was just so young. Yeah. So that was, and it was sort of, I was overpowered because the guy had a slug gun, so he used that.
So was this an adult or was this a teenager?
It was a teenager, but he had like years on me, sort of thing. Like I would have been 7 and he'd be 15, sort of thing. You know, like he's past puberty and I wasn't anywhere near it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't very nice, that's for sure. And I was powerless, so like, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
100%. And I think for our wonderful audience watching out there, you know, Matt talked about he blocked it the minute he left the property, and we know that our mind does that, and it protects us actually from the realization. So thanks for that, that Matt.
I think it's because we're so, in a way, we're like untainted, we're innocent sort of beings, and yeah, something traumatic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does affect you. And I can look back at different aspects of my childhood and know why I was a certain way. Yeah.
And what kind of way can you think of a particular way that you were that now you go, oh yeah, of course that makes sense?
Well, it's one day I did a lot of swimming and things like I suppose I'd try and hide my body. I was ashamed of that,
Yeah.
you know. And whereas the other kids would be at the blocks with their shoulders back, shaking their hands or something, and I'd be the opposite.
Yeah.
So to me, that someone should have picked up on it, but they never did.
Yeah.
So that was a bit sad in a way, because I reckon I could have picked myself. I would have asked questions if I was someone, you know, an adult back then. If I was a survivor adult, I reckon I would have picked it up and at least asked some questions, you know.
So do you think, because that's actually a really interesting point you raise, Matt. Do you think that today it's any different?
I'd like to think that parents have enough intelligence in this day and age because of the web and things like that, they'd be more knowledgeable on sexual abuse of children and would pick up some signs that previous generations wouldn't have picked up, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Because
think.
we go, Gloria.
Sorry. It's just a topic people really struggle to discuss. It's
right.
Yeah.
It's like a subject. Yeah, people would just shut you down straight away if you tried to bring it up. And really, before I reckon about 2015, after that, it started to get a bit more open, or after the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, and a few of those things happened. And I think, what's his name? Terry Crews from there. Brooklyn 911 came out and said he'd been abused, and a couple of other stars, or you know, film stars or whatever, TV stars, and that made a bit of a difference too, because he's a big muscly American in that, and if he can be abused, then that means, you know, basically anyone can, you know, because it doesn't. I know from my work now that size and means nothing when it comes to sexual abuse, because you're just children, you know, when it does happen. So you haven't even formed yet anyway, you know.
No.
Your brains or anything, you know. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good.
It's interesting and really, really valid. You know, there'll be men out there watching this, Matt, who can so relate or may feel a measure of relief listening to you, because you know, these people, I think even like Billy Connolly and Richard Branson, you know, and Russell Brand, they've all come out and said, hey, I was abused as a child.
Yeah. And the more people that do that, then the more open the subject will get, you know, and until it's not taboo. Yeah, it's not a taboo subject.
Yeah.
Which will be good, you know, when it finally gets to that stage.
100%. And, you know, it's brave people like you and me that are prepared to speak that actually help give permission or hope to others.
That's right. Yeah. You've got to get it out. You've got to talk. It's all part of the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a major part.
Yeah.
The damage is already been done for physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you're doing
It's
great.
all good. I'm good. It just
Great.
does affect us,
Yeah, of course it does. I think until the day we die, Matt, the impact sits with us to a smaller or larger degree, and that's you've been able to turn that around and help give back by doing the work that you are now doing, and therefore giving hope to other men out there. Do I guess I'm just interested for for the listeners out there, were you ever able to share with your parents what had happened eventually?
Not fully. My father's passed now, but I think I tried to broach the subject with him once, and his reaction was just, "Oh, it happens to everyone," and just kept on walking because he was doing something. So he didn't even have time to stop and listen. So that's sort of what it was like. Get over it,
Yeah.
So he wasn't even prepared to listen to the details, because it's not something, that you can do that.
No, that's true, and it sort of leads us to think, doesn't it, Matt? If he's saying things like that happens to everyone, is he saying potentially something happened to him? Yeah.
Well, but he wasn't prepared to open up or say anything about it, so it was a closed subject, an open and then shut down subject straight away, which is what the older generation did that's why we never mentioned it, really. It's because you just get shut down straight away, or that doesn't happen to boys, or any of those negative things that people with not a broad mind or understanding, that's what they're like,
And of course, then that then confirms for you as a young child, gosh, never say anything, or as an older child, never say anything. There's no permission, there's no appetite for it. No one really wants to know. And so, of course, then we just bury it more deeply, don't we?
Yeah, and it comes back in usually your adolescence, and that's probably touching alcohol or drugs before you ever would have if you hadn't been affected by it,
Yeah. Well, and that's another good point. You're full of gold nuggets today, Matt. It's funny you talk about that. Those addictions like drugs and alcohol, and even smoking and food and gambling, and even working too much. It all comes under the heading, really, of self-abuse. When you think about it,
because you don't love yourself because of what happened, and that's another subject in itself. But most sexual abuse victims of childhood sexual abuse, they in their adolescence they go hard on the drugs or the alcohol at some stage. And I remember at 23, I never thought I'd make 30. Like, I thought if I made 30, it'd be a miracle, just because I didn't really care about myself or where I was or what I was doing. I was pretty loose in that aspect.
yeah.
And now I've just about doubled my life expectancy. So I think that's fantastic. Yeah.
So we've
I'm
got you.
57, I'm 57, so like, you know, I'm getting close to 60. Yeah.
So we've got you for a bit longer, Matt.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. But I was just thinking with childhood, like things like when I went to the toilet, and that this is part of the subject matter. It's like when I say went number twos or whatever, it would be red, and I always wondered, why is it red? Now I look back and now I know it's because of what had happened across the road beforehand. But you
yes.
don't, when you're a kid, you don't pick up things like that. You just go, oh, I wonder why that's red. It's really blood in there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's things like that that in hindsight, I'd block them right out, you know, like, and it never came back until I was in my 40s, really. But you know, the whole thing I could put together like a jigsaw puzzle after it came back to me in flashbacks, like, yeah, a wee bit here and there. So, like you say, you're right. Your brain can only take so much of it, and it gives you a wee bits until you get the full picture and you can put it all together until you can handle it really and not hurt yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank God we had that mind, Matt, and thank God your mind protected you. So
Yeah.
in your 40s, obviously the memories came back and you started getting flashbacks. Was there anything in particular that triggered that happening at that time in your life?
I honestly think it was because I had a young family in my 30s and that. I probably started to get them in my mid 30s, but by the time I hit 40ish, I had most of the picture together. I think it was when I stopped drinking and doing drugs.
Okay.
It's really when my mind cleared and I started to get, or my brain started to let it through, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, let it through and that. But before, up until like, I was more a binge drinker at the weekends. I wasn't drinking at home during the week or anything. I was never like that. But at the weekends, I'd have a good nudge at the alcohol and that, you know.
Gave it a good crack, did you, Matt?
Yeah, I was a good binge drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could hang in there.
Well, and you might find this interesting, but I applaud whatever you did to survive, because this is pretty hard to and for our survivors watching, as you know, guys, it's really hard to deal with these flashbacks and triggers when they come. And
Right.
whatever you had to do to survive that, I applaud you. Because it's pretty scary, pretty scary.
True.
Yeah.
Like, I heard an ACC person once talking to a room full of people to do with social welfare and a bit of this sort of stuff, and he says, well, you can't talk to a tombstone, you know. You can't talk to a tombstone, so you don't want anything to happen to the person. You want them to get better, so go easy on them. They might be doing that, but at least they're not dead, you know. They're still breathing and that. So he was basically telling them to lighten up on the person and don't be so harsh, because another pushing from someone in that room and they might harm themselves when they leave, because a lot of it's, you go into such a black hole, you know, it's massive.
Yeah. And when you kind of were able to start to manage your memories and recall and flashbacks, were you able to reach out at that stage, or when what happened for you in your kind of recovery, Matt? How did you first start the process?
Well, I tried in 1999, I think it was, to find a counsellor, but I got a bad one, and it wasn't good, and I didn't stay with them. And then I think it was 9 years later, I couldn't help myself but talk about it to my wife, who was the only person I felt safe talking to about it. But she couldn't understand where I was coming from, and she wanted me to get put on certain medication. So I ended up in Hill Morton Hospital in Christchurch voluntarily to get my meds sorted. And that week I was in there, Ken Clearwater came and visited, and yeah, that was my first talk.
First disclosure with someone
Yeah,
about it.
with a fellow survivor.
Yeah. Oh, well done. Well done, because that's the hardest, isn't it? The first.
Yeah. And to have someone with compassion,
Yes.
you know, I just got such a ear that understands what you're saying, you know, that gets where you're coming from, and you know that because I've been through it.
That they understand and that they know what you're saying. It's like we are.
The empathy they have for you, you know, so they don't make light of anything.
No.
Yeah.
We are speaking the same language, aren't we, us survivors? We understand. Yeah. And I think that's so important. It's that sense of community and yeah, full
to be heard, I suppose, to be listened to, you know.
Yeah.
And not get shut down.
Yeah, well, that's just so valuable and so needed. So Matt, you know, you'd spoken to Ken, and then clearly you're now doing this fabulous work you're doing today. So
I don't really know how that happened, but it happened. Yeah.
But you're doing it.
Yeah, well, I suppose on my road to recovery, like Ken got me into ACC counselling, you know, a sexual abuse counsellor that, you know, knew a few things about it.
Yeah.
And I did that for probably 5 years, so it was a long time. But that, with every bit that comes out of you, you do heal a wee bit more. So it's a bit like gutting a fish. You got to get it all out and then get sewn up in a way and then healed, you know, then you heal, because you got to get every little bit out. Yeah, because otherwise it just festers in you, and you're not the person you should be, you know.
No, I get that. But I'm loving that fish analogy. It's like gutting a fish. You've got to get it all out. That's
yeah, because it's festering away in you, and it's not good, not healthy.
No, exactly. So I guess the just looking at what you're doing now, and clearly, you know, being the peer support worker you are, the strong advocate for men in New Zealand. How did that happen? How did you get into that?
I think it was just through going to, at that time it was called, what was it? Yeah, it was just male survivors of sexual abuse. And Ken was running it, and it wasn't government funded or anything like that. So it was pretty small at that stage. And I was just lucky Christchurch had it even happening, you know, because most centres in New Zealand never had anything for males at all to do with sexual abuse. So it was it. And I knew Ken through boxing in a way. Like Ken had fought a guy I had known in Christchurch, who my father had trained at boxing. So I knew Ken a wee bit like that, and we always got on, me and Ken Clearwater. So they'd do home visits, so every now and then they'd drop in if they were in my area. So I got, and that was nice because I was, like I say, in the black hole, like I wasn't well, really.
Yeah, yeah.
I was, because I was still going through my ACC counselling and that, and then Paul Dempsey helped me as well. He's Ken's right-hand man sort of thing at the time, which was good. And they had a couple of, Ken ran a couple of things, like he had a big conference here, and before that he had David Lysett came over and did the Bristlecone project, which I was part of with Ken and that, and 20 or 30, 20 something other Kiwi survivors, and we had an exhibition that ran in the museum in Christchurch here for 6 months, and believe it or not, we were quite surprised too, but it actually won the following year. It won that award for it, so it was pretty well done.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's from the Service Museum Awards 2018 was the year we got that. So it was nice to have something out there that hadn't been done before. And David Lysett, I think he's still the vice president of 1 in 6 in America, which is 1 in 6 boys gets abused, sexually abused. I think it might be 1 in 3 women or girls, but it's 1 in 6 boys. So because he run the Bristlecone project, we've got to tie into 1 in 6, which is to the Americans outfit, I suppose, the big boys. So and David's a really nice person. He came over and took our photo, so we had a portrait of ourselves and then a story beside it. And it was just a brief read, but yeah. So
That's
anyway,
amazing.
yeah, it was really awesome.
That's
and
awesome.
Then there was the Southern Institute conference here that Ken run, and was it Aria, I think? Yeah, and the buildings in town. But he flew a few big names over from overseas, and I got to learn more. So I'm always learning and listening and hearing as I'm going along. But the things like that year, I was supposed to go and pick people up from the airport and that, but I couldn't do it because I was such a mess. So and I ended up, I just says, look, I just want to wash the dishes. So me and Al Nixon and another survivor, we just did that the whole weekend. That was our input for the conference and that. But then I got divorced after that, which was sad, but I dropped off my meds. And when I was on my meds, it might have been good for one aspect of me, but for another aspect of me, the side effects were worse. Like I ballooned up to 115 kilos, and I'm 93, I think, now. So like I had to get off them because I was feeling just like I was just feeling terrible about my appearance, and that's the body shame and all that sort of stuff. So I did. Got Leo, my dog. I've had him for 5 years. He's our mascot here at the centre.
Hello, Leo, the dog.
Yeah, because when you get them come in and they're really high strung or they're really in crisis, I sit Leo in their lap and he'll calm them down after 10 minutes just with them patting them, or I'll get them to walk him. There's a use for Leo, like he does calm people down, so and that's a good thing. So yeah.
So
yeah.
you're
Anyway, I got to, sorry, I know diverted off track, but anyway, we did that, and then Paul says that they got some government funding come through. So about 3 years ago now, they joined forces with Canterbury Men's Centre. So the men's centres here and Male Survivors Canterbury is under their umbrella to the left or right, and we sit under the banner. So what can happen is, with the counselling side of it, a lot of males need counselling. So they go in, and one of the last questions they might ask is, to a male, is, have you ever been sexually abused as a child or in your childhood? And if they say yes, they get the option to come and see us if they want to. So that's how we get a number of our clients, is that's how it works in Canterbury. And it's a good thing, you know, because guys, they're too scared to mention it until then, and they probably, like, some of them think about it and they come back a week or two later and they go, oh, I thought about that question, you know, that did happen to me, can I see someone? And that's how we get them, and we end up, there'll be a consent form, because we've got to have a consent form for them to help them through government departments and things like that, or where they're having difficulty, we can speak as an advocate for them or go with them or whatever to help them through their trouble. So they'll sign up, and then after that they can have weekly peer support one-on-ones with myself or Machu, or Tyrone or John. There's 4 of us now, sort of. But yeah, and then there's also Monday night group meetings, which are held from 5:30 to 7 every Monday night, and they get tea with that, so they get a meal. So Monday nights is the group that's been running the longest, it's the most established, and that's where the person, if they want to, they can talk about their abuse to other guys. You know, they've got that option. They don't have to when they're asked, because it goes around the room, you know, how do you feel? How's your week been? And, you know, if you've got anything to say, and it's an open field, they can say whatever they like, you know.
That's fantastic. And what I'm liking about what you're saying, Matt, is, you know, I'm thinking there's that wonderful sense of community. There's that common experiences. So there's that commonality. There's a purpose for these men, because they've all been through similar. And the reality is they have people like you 4 who are advocating, and Leo, we can't forget Leo, who are helping them to try and normalize the conversation around it. Not normalize what happened, but normalize the conversation. Yeah.
That's right. And we've all got something in common, which is the sexual abuse, I suppose. You know, like, it's not something we wanted, but it's something that you can't deny it's happened. So when you can talk to like-minded people that have been through the same thing as you, it just makes you feel a bit safer, I suppose, and there's no one threatening you. You know, it's a safe place for our guys. That's what we want, you know.
Yeah, and that's incredible, because the thing is, if it sits within you, it controls you. You know, it's what you said earlier. If you can talk it out, it lessens, doesn't it? The weight of it can lessen.
Yeah, well, the more you talk it out, the easier it gets to talk about it too, you know. And it's over a period of time, it frees you up to where you mightn't tear up as much, or you mightn't get triggered as much and shed a tear, you know.
Yeah. And look, it's just emotion, isn't it? But I understand what you're saying. It's hard for people because they don't want to expose that vulnerability. You know.
See, part of it was when you're by yourself and you're isolating, because you're isolating yourself from the community and people usually, and it's a dark place, and to come out and actually start to function again in the community, and be with, like, you'll be sitting in that room and hear stories, and you'll go, God, that's terrible, you know. But you're not the only one. Like, you realise that does it help a lot more people out there? Because when you're at home, before you meet anyone from our outfit or to do with sexual abuse, you don't think there's many out there. You think you're the only one, but you're not. There's other people out there that want to help, help you through it, and to come from the darkness into the light, because that's what it's like, really.
Well, it's a topic that people don't like to discuss because they don't want to accept it goes on. And,
Yes.
You said it's up to 1 in 3 girls. Well, the police tell me it's potentially up to 1 in 3 girls and boys.
Okay,
well, when you think about it, boys aren't going to talk about it. So it's so underreported. It's really hard to get these numbers, but we've got a big issue in this country, I think, and across the world with this, because as you said earlier, there's so many levels to this. There's so many ways this impacts us, and we need to stand beside each other, I think, and just honor that. Hey, if you find a voice, even if with one person, wow, what courage that takes, eh? And we stand with you. So Matt, as we're moving into a close, I guess for our audience out there watching, what are some things, 2 or 3 things that you have done that have helped you in terms of your recovery? What's helped you?
Well, for a start, I suppose getting around other survivors was a big thing. So
yeah,
it takes a lot to go from seeing someone individually to going into a group. Like, a lot of people don't mind the one-on-ones, but it'll take a year or 2 before they can actually go into the group and sit there and feel as though they should be there, I suppose. Because it's there, I shouldn't be there, I don't want to go. But really, it's the best place for you, is with other survivors.
Yeah.
And with my thinking, you got to change it. This is easy to say now that I'm through my hard times, or the blackness. I call it a black hole, because if you can pull yourself out of it, it's a miracle. Yeah.
Well, I'm so pleased you did, Matt. Thank heavens you did, because you've probably helped countless men.
Yeah, but you got to change you got to think positive. You got to look into the future, not too far ahead when you're not well. Like, it might only be an hour at a time, but once you're better, you got to, as soon as, because I don't crash anymore like I used to. I used to crash and get triggered every day 2 or 3 times, but now I don't. And it's because I know you got to learn more about yourself. You got to look inwards and see, why did I do that? And you got to figure it out, so the next time, before it happens, it's coming. I can feel it coming, and you're ready for it. And now it's just a mindset. It's a 5-degree change in the way you think from negative to positive, and you just got to keep thinking good things. Happy, good things are going to come, and you just keep believing and then speaking it out, and you got to stop speaking negatively all the time, because it does get better. A lot of it is changing your mindset and not being as angry as you used to be, or drink as much as you used to. Is to front up and look in the mirror and and own it to a certain extent that happened to you.
Yeah. And, I like what you're saying, and some of what I think is in there is, being grateful, Matt, and I can see in you that probably every day, it seems that you'll be finding things you feel grateful for, like that little dog there.
Yeah. Or just people you meet, like, you can meet some wonderful people in this job.
Yeah. Well, it's
And
amazing. And I guess just one as we need to finish, but is there anything else you would like to advise our viewers, knowing there'll be men watching who might just pick up the phone after watching this? So is there anything, Matt, you would like to share that you haven't?
well, yeah, give Canterbury Men's Centre a ring, or Male Survivors Canterbury, or Male Survivors Aotearoa. Like, there's branches all around the country now where you can, so it doesn't matter if you're in Christchurch, you could be in Auckland, or Wellington, Dunedin, plus some of the smaller places like Hamilton and there, you know. And reach out and ring up, just make an appointment, just talk to someone, and don't be scared. No one's, we're there to help. Yeah,
And it's all confidential, I would assume.
that's right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's all
Awesome.
confidential, and and you can speak as, we can say as much as you like. You don't have to say everything at the first time. You can take your time and just until you feel comfortable and safe, that you're in safe surroundings. Yeah. I just want the government to help us out more and to realise that there's such a need to help us. And a lot of it right now, since there's a few of us now, slowly building like us survivors that are advocating, and that is to get us into the schools and that, and like tell the children, get them younger. They've got to know that there's somewhere they can go, or a phone number to ring. They can get help.
Yeah. I think I totally agree with you. So look, audience, aren't we privileged to have had Matt share? And for you guys out there, or for you women out there who are watching, who may have a partner or a brother or someone who's experienced some form of child sexual abuse, please encourage them to watch this. As Matt says, they're getting bigger throughout New Zealand. There's more available. You can ring Male Survivors Aotearoa and get some support. But I guess I just want to say, a couple of things that have stuck with me is I'll never look at dogs like Leo again in the same way. And Matt, your courage and your ability to overcome and just turn it around into giving back, much respect and araha to you.
Yes, and thank you, Gloria, for putting us out there, because, like you say, if only one person comes forward and gets help, well, it was worth it.
Yeah, thank you. And look, for our survivors, just as we're going into close out now, as always, I think you're amazing. I think whatever you need to share, you will always be supported on this channel. We believe you, we stand beside you, and we see you.
Kia kaha.
Awesome.